curriculums and other things that students do. This hour-long survey is administered 4 times in a student's life in 6th, 8th, 10th, and 12th grades. The KTC program is what I'll refer to it now. Comes from the Office of the United States Government Substance Abuse and Mental Health Services Administration, who funds it through the Kansas Department of Aging and Disabilities Services, Behavioral Health Services, and administers it through the Southeast Kansas Education Service Center, Greenbush. It has been given in Kansas since 1994 and was first developed by Drs. J. David Hawkins and Richard Catalano at the University of Washington's Social Development Research Group. Well, as it turns out, this author and speaker feels that the best training in our schools today is for alcohol and drug abuse and other bad behaviors is this survey. After you read the survey, which you have with you, please ask yourself if the 6th grader, or any student for that matter, should be asked the KCTC survey questions. Most teachers I've spoken with will tell you that these questions are never appropriate for 6th grader. Students are told in the instructions, this is not a test. So there are no right or wrong answers. However, the survey incriminates the students and feels very much like a test and looks like a test. It almost looks like you're taking an SAT or something. And it's lengthy, 141 questions, and 40 more questions can be asked if the district adds them in. Young adults whom I've asked if they recall taking a drug survey in school say that occasion was one they will never forget. It is disturbing that of all the tests in their education career, this survey stands out and is always remembered by young people. I'm also told that they so dislike taking the survey and reading the questions that many just self-reported the worst possible answers just to get it done, and who could blame them? So for that reason, I believe your data is not valid from this survey. Now, if you could go to the survey itself, and I'll refer to certain numbers. So question number 27 asks these questions. And I would ask you to keep in mind, we're talking about particularly a 6th grader. How old were you when you first smoked marijuana, smoked a cigarette, had more than a sip or two of beer, wine, or hard liquor, began drinking alcoholic beverages regularly, got suspended from school, got arrested, carried a handgun, attacked someone with the idea of seriously hurting them, and belonged to a gang? Question 35. How many times in the past year have you been suspended from school, carried a handgun, sold illegal drugs, stolen or tried to steal a motor vehicle, such as a car or a motorcycle, been arrested, attacked someone with the idea of seriously hurting them, again being asked, been drunk or high at school, taken a handgun to school, stolen something worth more than $5, purposely damaged or destroyed property that did not belong to you, not counting your family property, it says, taken something from a store without paying for it. Now I would like to move on to questions 46 through 49. And these are asking about a person's, asking them to rate their quality of life. Again, I'm asking you to think of 6th graders here. Maybe your grandchildren or children. Sometimes I think that life is not worth it. At times I think I'm no good at all. All in all, I'm inclined to think that I am a failure. In the past year, have you felt depressed or sad most days, even if you felt okay sometimes? Now, is this appropriate during a difficult year like we had in 2020, or for that matter, any year? Well, now we go on. Now we're going to the drug usage section on this survey. I want to tell you that 2 of the drugs listed here, my spell checker didn't recognize, but we're asking a 6th grader to recognize this. On how many occasions, if any, have you used in your lifetime and during the past 30 days marijuana, LSD or other psychedelic, cocaine or crack, MDMA, ecstasy, sniffed glue, breathed the contents of an aerosol spray can, or inhaled other gases or sprays in order to get high? Tyrexetine, T-Rex or Rec, methamphetamines, meth, prescription opiate pain relievers such as Vicodin, Oxycontin, or Tylenol, Tylox, without a doctor's orders. Prescription tranquilizers such as Zantac, Valium, or Ambien without a doctor's orders. Prescription stimulants such as Ritalin or Adderall without a doctor's orders, or other illegal drugs. Leaving nothing to chance exposure, every 6th grader has now lost all innocence after just reading the questions. Remember, there are no round answers to this test. Questions 84 to 141 probe into the family and community life. With questions like this, do you feel very close to your mother and your father? Do you enjoy spending time with them? People in my family have serious arguments. Have any of your brothers or sisters ever, and then there's a long list of bad behaviors that they could check. If you carried a handgun without your parents' permission, would you be caught by your parents? So this becomes a training tool for turning in family members. Well, what is the outcome, some of the outcomes for this survey? Naturally, youth will learn that all bad behavior listed in the surveys are normal. The school has reinforced and normalized all the possible ways to consume drugs and alcohol and how to get into trouble. After statistical analysis of the surveys, it may be determined that the students in the school district have problems so serious that the next obvious step must be drug testing. So the answers did matter after all. If they come up positive on the real drug test with consequences, it could mean suspension, having it reported on their school record for at least 2 years, and off extracurricular activities. So the positive things in life have been taken away. And the parent usually is not allowed to opt their child out of the drug test program. With this amending legislation of the 2014 Student Data Privacy Act, the parent or guardian must be shown copies of the actual tests, questionnaires, surveys, and examinations, and must give written permission to opt their child into participating in it. You know, my goal here is that I think if our communities who really do care about education, we all do, when they read this, they'll say, let's look for another system. And there are other ways to get data. I have talked with judges and juvenile justice people do have reliable data for that community to use. I believe that this survey is a teaching tool that trains students in many dangerous lifestyles. Just by the very reading of the survey, what youth focus upon in their lives come about. Why would we have them focus on this? By taking this survey, a young 6th grader is fully introduced to everything. And is it going to solve anything in the student's life? They take the test, it's handed in, or it's on their iPads, and that's it. Nothing's said. You know, what if a child is having questions about their value in life? Wouldn't we want somebody to come alongside them? So, in sort of a conclusion, I believe, again, that these questions tell a very clear message to the student. And it feels like we're saying to them, you are guilty by the very wording of the questions. It's not a positive approach at all. It's negative. When did you do this stuff? So by the very wording, you're guilty and fess up is how it feels to me. You're a failure. You're no good at all. You're depressed, sad most days, and life's not worth it. Why would we do this to a student? What's happened to education in Kansas? Are we putting this degrading, counterintuitive document before our youth just to fund more programs? I feel most teachers and school administrators really haven't even read this survey, but they're administering it. And I would say to possibly those parents and guardians and grandparents that may be watching this hearing, that it's time to be proactive, letting your students' schools know in writing that any surveying and programs concerning your children's social, emotional, and mental health must be evaluated and approved by you before being administered to your students. In summation, I will say that this survey has failed to solve anything. It promotes dangerous lifestyles, drug and alcohol usage. The validity of the data is questionable. It violates students' right to privacy. It violates parental and guardian rights. It's costly to the state and federal government, really, and local school districts, wastes precious classroom time. I humbly ask you to recognize that this survey and other behavioral testing is being overused in our schools, and parental oversight is needed to correct this trend. Please help protect our Kansas students from growing data collection invasion of their private lives and support House Bill 2302. Thank you very much.
We're going to hold questions until we go through all the proponents, but I know you're available when that time comes. And to the other proponents, we do have your testimony, so just try to summarize. And I know the previous proponent did a good job of walking through, so if you have points that highlight other things that she didn't mention, focus on that. Next up is Morgan Riot. I don't know if I pronounced that right, but I apologize if I didn't.
Do you mind if I take my mask off?
You can.
Thank you. I recognize you from last year. Yeah, okay. Actually, I do come from a law enforcement family. My name is Morgan Riot. I'm from Bellevue, just down the road here a little ways. My dad and I farm. He was the Pottawatomie County Sheriff for about 20 years. He spent 30 years in law enforcement. My mother's a police officer in Wamego, too. So I've got a pretty great amount of respect for our law enforcement officials and for what you guys are doing down here. So thank you for that. I appreciate the opportunity to come down today. Like Linda said, we're proponents for Bill 2302. It's my understanding this test has been around for about 25 years. It's about an hour-long test, and I think she said it's about 140 questions. I graduated in 2017. I had the opportunity to take this test, so I've done it firsthand. I really, truly believe that a lot of this information that you're getting off the test is irrelevant. I don't know about you folks. I'm assuming everybody was in high school at one point and got the chance to sit through a couple tests that they really disliked. My senior year, when I got to take this test for the last time, I actually got pulled from an FFA event, and I was the chapter president, so they had to stop without me. So my thoughts were, let's rush through this, let's get back because I've got a job to do. So I hurried, and I clicked, and who knows what answers I pressed, but I pressed them. And I would tell you that there's a lot of other kids doing the same things. Question 63 asks how many times you've used marijuana in the last 30 days. It's a multiple choice test. I don't know about you. I've never smoked marijuana. I've never used recreational drugs, and I don't plan to. But if I had, I sure wouldn't have raised my hand in the middle of high school and said, yes, ma'am, I just smoked marijuana last night and I plan to do it tomorrow. That's kind of my opinion on that, though. I suppose maybe there's somebody out there that'd be willing to do it. Falsified test results, I do believe, would be a problem with the test. And I'll paraphrase here because I know you guys have things to do today, too. As we talked about earlier, the Kansas Student Data Privacy Act allows parents to view a blank copy of the test so they could read the questions. Like question number 122, do you feel close to your mother? If a kid didn't feel close to their mother and their mom were to read that test and then ask them, how do you answer question 122, what do you think of our relationship? Maybe they're in an abusive situation. Maybe they're having a rough time at home. I'd think that'd put that kid in a pretty darn tough spot to have to look at their mother and either lie or tell her the way they answered that test. So I sure believe that this test could cause some other issues ongoing. Like I said, I'm from a law enforcement family, so I've got some pretty good ties to our local law enforcement community back in Bellevue, Pottawatomie County. I did have the chance before I came in here last year to sit down and chat with some youth justice professionals. And one thing I do know is that youth on probation get reassessed every 6 months by juvenile intake, and that's done face-to-face. So this test, excuse my crudity here for a phrase, but it's kind of a shotgun effect. It's testing all these kids, whether they have a problem or not. So the kids that don't have problems, or even the kids that do have problems, are going to click through it, like I said. Juvenile intake's looking at kids that do have issues, relevant issues, kids that have real problems. I am all for helping those kids and making sure they get on the right track. Everybody needs a helping hand every now and then. But we want to focus on those kids, and we want to make sure that those kids are the ones getting the help. So KDOC, Kansas Department of Corrections, gets all this data from juvenile intake, and it is on file. So this would be a really, really easy, accurate way to go ahead and look at the real numbers and what's really, really going on in our state. And as a young Kansan, I think that's really, really important. Not only would that save everybody a whole lot of time, it'd probably save quite a bit of money, too, to use data we already have. That's really all I've got. I appreciate the opportunity again, and I sure hope that people can get a chance to really think about this and chew it over the right way. So, thank you.
Thank you, Morgan. We're going to hold for questions later.
You bet.
Next up is Barbara Saldivar. Sorry. Thank you. Welcome to the committee.
Thank you. I'm the State Director for Concerned Women for America of Kansas. And in case you don't know what CWA is, it's the largest public women's organization in the nation with hundreds of thousands of members across the country. Thank you all for Chairman Hubert and members of the committee for discussing this important issue. CWA of Kansas wants to see the quality of education restored to a level of excellence in academic achievement without governmental mandates that are detrimental to the parental and student rights. And parental rights include control over what parents see as beneficial to their child when it comes to certain tests. And this one that's been discussed is one of them that I think parents are would be very concerned with. HB 2302 ensures that they will. And that's about all I have to say, except thank you again for allowing me to speak about, and I hope you will pass HB 2302.
Thank you. We have a couple more proponents that are on WebEx, and I will recognize Linda User. I probably pronounced that wrong too, but the floor is yours,
Can you hear
Linda.
me?
Yes.
Great. Yeah, my name's Lisa Heesers. I think it was typed wrong. I think it's correct on my testimony, but it was typed wrong on the list. My name's Lisa Heesers. Thank you for allowing me to speak to you remotely today. It's snowing here. At least it was all morning, and I just wasn't sure if I should head out to make the trip today. In regard to HB 2302, I'd like to speak to you as a parent. I fully support and affirm all of the points that were previously made by Linda Highland. As a parent, I've had kids in Kansas schools since the late 90s. And I can tell you that until just a couple of years ago were parents even aware that this survey, this Kansas Community That Care survey, was even being administered. And I didn't know it even for my own children for some time. And after this statute was enacted, that the schools were supposed to get an opt-in consent from parents, and the manner in which that consent was obtained has been via a blanket. While you're enrolling your kid in school, do you consent to surveys, questionnaires, tests, and on and on? And as a parent, you're not really sure exactly in the whole list of things that you're checking and signing when you're signing your kids up for school exactly what that meant. And not having a copy of the survey isn't really the right way to get consent from a parent. When my husband and I became aware of the survey that the kids were taking, we were very surprised as to the length, the comprehensiveness of the survey, the suggestibility of the survey, the fact that when we gave consent, it made us question what all else have we consented to during the school day that our kids they're just having the survey put in front of them and they just go ahead and do it, and not, parents not knowing that. So there is an opt-in right now, but I can tell you that at least in the school district that we are in, that opt-in has not been a very informed opt-in. And some people check it and some people don't. I can tell you that over the years, I have shared the information about the survey and provided copies of the survey to other parents, and they have been very surprised that that kind of a survey is something that's being given to the kids in the school. And once I've shared it with people, I haven't had one person say, oh, yeah, that looks great. I'd love for my kid to take that survey. Every single person that I've ever shared it with has said, I've made sure to let the school know. Can you tell me how I can make sure to let the school know that I don't want my kid taking that survey? So I think it's about informed consent. And over the years since this statute was put into place, that fundamental right of a parent to be fully informed and to decide what is in the best interest of their child has been attacked, and it continues to be over the years. This statute in particular seems to always end up with some kind of bill every year trying to remove active parenting to something that is more passive parenting. And those words, active and passive, were actually used in a testimony a couple of years ago by a group wanting to weaken this statute. And when I think about all of the groups that are allowed inside the school, the counselors, the social workers, the psychologists who have access to my kids on a daily basis, and to think that their perspective of my authority in regard to my children is such that they would rather grant only a less informed and a more of a passive authority in regard to my own kid. It's very disappointing that the school and would have those types of organizations, and that we have community organizations that have that kind of perspective in regard to parent authority. I think that we should be doing things that bolster and support parent authority and don't chip away at it. And it's things like this that if we want to only give parents an opt-in, an opt-out authority, then these very same groups come back at later points in time and saying, oh, well, we have to do this for all the kids because we have parents who aren't engaged and parents who aren't caring. Well, what I've experienced and what I see happening is that we're trying to create paradigms of parents who are not engaged and chip away at their fundamental authority. As a parent, I should know everything that's going on with my kid in the school, and I should know the content of the programming that they're being asked to participate in. And as a parent, I should be the ultimate authority to decide whether or not they should participate in it. So I very much am in support of this bill. I'm very much in support of making sure that the things that when we're asked as a parent to consent to it, that we're fully informed in regard to that consent. So I very much appreciate your support of this bill and ask you to vote for it, and I'll stand for any questions. Thank you.
And we will hold questions. Thank you, Lisa. There's one more WebEx testimony from Nick Reinecker. Nick, the floor is yours. Nick,
Thank you, Mr. Chair.
Okay. Thank you.
Can you hear me okay?
Yes.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman and members of the committee. I was scheduled for neutral testimony. Is that okay? Or
That's fine. Go ahead.
Okay. My name is Nick Reinecker from Inman, Kansas, and I chose neutral today, and I apologize for that. I was scheduled to testify twice in House Health and Human Services regarding a bill that dealt with the same statute, only their version included other mental health professional language in it. This committee heard from individuals like that yesterday, and like them, I care about children, I care about the need to do something, and I care that whatever is done is constitutional and not intrusive. Knowing that KSA 766316 is open in the form of House Bill 2302, and if passed out of committee, open for amendments on chamber floors, I present this neutral testimony for your consideration. More and more talk is being done about behavioral health. And as we look specifically at the public school system's role in this arena, including mental health intervention programs, I believe as a patron of my local school district and taxpaying citizen of the state, more understanding of the diagnostic and statistical manual is needed. This awareness will aid this body and the legislature to craft appropriate laws and avoid unintended consequences of the regulatory or statutory use of this manual for the interpretation of questionnaires, surveys, examinations, etc., regardless of sex or beliefs. The DSM-5 is a one-axis proprietary referral source used by clinicians involved in substance use disorder and mental health diagnosis authority. The DSM-5 has changed basic definitions and processes of disease classification by lowering criteria thresholds and inserting new disorders that are not in the conditions of further study appendix, whereby foregoing the crucible of science, which is more ideological than empirical. And thinking about the neurological spectrum all of us face on a daily basis, including those quote unquote bad days, reminds me of the folly to think that I, by watching the legislature work out this new WebEx technology on YouTube, could use this manual and check off some legislators and or committee assistants with a billable code, say like general anxiety disorder, and if licensed, at least one atypically prescribed FDA-approved synthetic pharmaceutical. But I digress. Regardless of the need to help children who may or may not have diminished amounts of proper love at home, this questioning with or without permission is unneeded in some areas and inappropriate in others. Yes, the government has a role to play. But like some of you who may see my testimony as a knee-jerk reaction by a misguided parent, please don't provide the optics of the same by talking of expanding Medicaid, a system that will eventually be unsustainable at a state level and could increase the risk of no longer recognizing a person as an individual endowed with certain rights, but rather a faceless diagnosis in need of medication-assisted treatment and counseling, hopefully face-to-face. This is not about $10 words and empty promises used as taxing leverage for public health and safety purposes. This is about posterity that is free. School choice would be great too, and leaving it to local school boards on information they want. But please be aware of all ripple effects and unintended consequences when legislating, because if you build it, government, using data like this for consensus estimates and shrinkage rates, interpreted by the DSM-5, they will come. I would support this bill if my suggested changes are implemented, including striking the language that I have in my testimony and inserting the language that I have in my testimony. Please check out the video on understanding the DSM-5. Thank you, and I will stand for any questions.
Thank you, committee. Before we get into questions, I can answer or make a clarification. I was on the Valley Center School Board in 1994 when this program was first initiated, and it was an opt-out format. I was quite concerned at that time and raised questions about how it could be in an opt-out format. We began at that point in time trying to elevate the issue to get it changed. And again, you see the current status that it's opt-in with informed consent. So again, that was 27 years ago. And, you know, I appreciate all of the testimony today, and I appreciate for the parental input that we have as far as for all of us as parents and grandparents, that this is something that we just need to, even with this hearing, let people know about this survey in a way that it helps to help parents understand that they need to be aware of what their children are being tested on, what they're doing, and they need to be able to have consent when that is happening. With that, I'm going to open it up for questions from the committee of the conferees today. Representative Sanders.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. This question is specifically for Lisa Husers. Lisa, at the top of page 2 of your testimony, it says that it is promoted, meaning the test, as being anonymous. This survey is not anonymous. So could you expand on that a little bit?
Yes. The first couple of items, can you hear me? I just want to make sure you can hear. Okay.
I can.
The first, I believe, on the front page of the survey, there are some classifications as to building, school district, a couple of items like that. And then the first at least dozen or more questions on the survey, they're all personally identifying data points. So especially in smaller school districts, people, we have in prior years have had people testify as to if you have 7 data points, you can pretty much identify, specifically identify people. So that is the basis for that statement.
Do they purport that it's anonymous?
Yeah, when they send out the information on like this survey, an email that we got on this survey a number of years ago, the school principal said that the survey was completely anonymous.
Thank you.
Mm-hmm.
Further questions
You're
from the
welcome.
committee? Representative Collins.
Thank you, Mr. Chair. Yeah, you do make a good point that, you know, several data points in a small school especially, it wouldn't be too hard to figure out who filled it out, which makes me wonder who, after the survey is taken, who in the school has access to it. Does a teacher just get to see it, or, you know, down the line, people in the office, who has access to it after it's been completed?
And I don't
Is
know
that
if
a question?
well, I don't think really for any of the testimony that could address that. Maybe Cheryl, you might. I don't know if you. I know you're not on the agenda, but you're involved with how the test gets administered.
Cheryl Simmel on behalf of Greenbush. My understanding is that not unlike, say, teacher evaluations or something like that, surveys are collected afterwards. The reason they look like a test format is because they're scanned, which further, you know, attempts to ensure some of that privacy. The report out piece that talks about anonymity is that below a certain number that's collected at a school level or at a building level, that data is not reported out because of concerns that that data could be personally identifiable.
All right, thanks, Cheryl. And I just want, on another note, I just want to mention Greenbush is in my district and something I'm really proud of. You do a lot of good things there, so thanks for that.
And I would just, hopefully, as we identify who else is administering the test, there's a little bit of self-policing as far as how we continue to stay on top of the concerns that are being addressed in this committee so that, so that we don't have issues come up. Because if that ever, would happen, then that changed the dynamic. So I know that you and others are committed to making sure that we're doing this test in the proper way with informed consent, and it's not being handled in a way where you're handed a bunch of papers and being asked to sign without even knowing what you're signing or looking at a test. So that's helpful just to continue to make sure everybody is aware of that. And even when we send out the permission, we'll try to emphasize that. So thank you. Go ahead.
Just one more comment. I want to be clear that Greenbush administers the communities that care survey. We are happy to work with you at some of the other entities that we know do other surveys that are similar. But the one that I am addressing specifically is the communities that care survey, and that is one.
I understand. And that's where even, like I said, I think as we identify the others and try to get information, I think one of the intent of the committee, I think in my mind, is to make sure that we're doing things right and that nobody's misunderstanding the intent of the law or from this hearing issues that are being raised. Thank you. Further questions from the committee? I'll look online. Have you seen anything? Anybody raise their hand, Adam? All right. Without further questions, we are going to go ahead and close the hearing at this time. Committee, I know, like I said, this was last year something that after the hearing that we went ahead and worked it and kicked it out. There are, no opponents. I do know that there were some questions raised. And again, if anybody would wish to address those, if we do work the bill, that would be fine at that time. Let's go ahead. We have time, I think, to do this so that we wouldn't have to do it next week. Representative Thomas, would you like to make a motion?
I would like to make a motion that we work and pass out House Bill 2038 favorably as a committee.
All right. Do we have a second? Representative Estes. Have a motion and a second. Now we can have discussion. Committee, like I said, when we do this in this way, I think it is non-controversial with no opponents. Is there any discussion in regards to the bill and the hearing that we just had? Representative Schreiber.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Have we gotten anything more from the insurance department as far as a fiscal note that
you're thinking of
the letter that we received? The letter that we received said that they weren't able to calculate it. I know there's going to be a cost, but it seems I'm not ready to support it without some kind of certainty on that.
I think you're thinking of a different bill, the one that we talked about on the floor. So this survey.
Yeah.
I could tell you
I was already going to 2038. I'm sorry.
Yeah, I could tell you were confused, and so now that you're no longer confused, thank you.
And I'll mute myself.
Mr. Chairman, so are we talking about 2302, what we just had the hearing on?
That's what you made your motion, right? All right. Well, my vice chairman is going to correct his mistake.
I withdraw that motion, and I move that the committee pass out House Bill 2302 favorably.
Well, Representative Schreiber, I think you helped us to correct an error before it was.
My apologies.
All right. And Representative Estes, are you willing to, we're going to strike the other and move on to the motion from Thomas and the second from Estes. And thank you, Representative Schreiber, for your question. Further questions from the committee? Without further questions, Representative Thomas, would you like to close?
Thank you. On House Bill 2302, I close.
You've heard the motion. All those in favor signify by saying aye or raising your hand.
Aye.
Opposed? Nay, or raise your hand. I
Nay.
think was there a nay?
Yes, please.
Okay, would you, and who, help me to identify, would you like to be recorded?
Representative Featherston?
Okay. Would you like to be recorded, Representative Featherston?
That's fine, thank you.
All right. Okay, so there was one nay vote. With that, the motion carries. Thank you, committee. We will be getting together next Tuesday. No meetings tomorrow or Monday. So just be prepared. I think we are having a hearing, I think, on Representative Thomas's bill with financial literacy. And we also are going to have a briefing from the State Board of Education that will give some of the background on efforts that have been taken in this area, because it's been going, this is an issue with financial literacy that's been around for a while. I think I actually had a bill on it years and years ago. And we'll get into those details next week when we get into the briefing and hearing. With that, committee, thank you. And we are adjourned. See you next week.